So hello and welcome to the Mindful Medics podcast. I am your host, Dr. Leonaura Rhodes, and today I am so excited to bring to you a guest whose name is Teimojin Tan, and I'm going to introduce him now. His life has been a blend of adventure, service, and medicine. He was raised in Montreal, Canada, with a love for travel, and he developed a deep appreciation for indigenous cultures and their survival skills. Witnessing health struggles in developing countries inspired him to work for nonprofits and ultimately pursue a career in medicine. He served his country in the Canadian Army Reserve, honing his survival skills in harsh environments. After medical school, he became a doctor, drawn to fighting illness and the healing power of the natural world. This led him to specialize in wilderness medicine. Dr. Tan also appeared on Series 9 of the survival show Alone, surviving an amazing 63 days alone in the wilderness. Teimojin's dream is to use his skills to help others. He works as a physician in remote areas and teaches wilderness medicine through his online course, Survival Doctors. And this is a company he founded with other experts, the goal being to empower people with knowledge to stay safe and healthy in any situation. So welcome, Dr. Tan, to the Mindful Medic Show.
Thank you for having me. What an introduction.
I know. Well, you are an amazing, amazing person with an amazing life so far. So I'm so pleased to have you here. So tell us a little bit about your early life and what inspired you to pursue a career in medicine.
So medicine almost happened by mistake for me because I was very much adamant that I travel a bunch. And I started solo traveling when I was like 16, 17. And it came to a point where you go to these countries, they're absolutely beautiful. And even though there are times where you are observing and appreciating this beautiful aspects of these countries, you can't stop but to think and to see how life is completely different in those countries. And I began to see a lot of the hardships, a lot of the suffering of people. And I think any human, any person would be inclined to help someone or have that inclination to help someone when they feel and see someone else suffering. And that was my first impression when I started to travel quite a bit. The problem was I just didn't know how. I saw people in East Africa almost emaciated from food insecurity and also HIV, where the percentages were almost like 30% of every single patient that walked into a clinic had end-stage AIDS. And it was heartbreaking because I was vacationing in these places. So I ended up volunteering at clinics along with a few nonprofits in the area. And one of my mentors at the time was a family doctor who was also a partner at a Canadian nonprofit. So he led me down that track of do medicine to not only know how to heal people, but also to be a custodian for systemic changes in these environments. And that's what I aim to do specifically for indigenous populations in North America and around the world.
I love that. What an incredible story, and so glad that you are doing that. That population needs really good doctors, as much, if not more than other populations as well. So thank you for all that you're doing. That's truly incredible. So tell me, how was medical training and how has your career been so far? Have there been any challenges or has it been an easy ride for you?
Oh, I think any physician who says their journey to become a doctor was easy is either a savant or lying, because I think the journey itself is just tremendously difficult. There's a bunch of sacrifice, both personal, intellectual, physical. You're missing birthdays, you're missing family. And for me as a Canadian, I was doing schooling in the US, so I was away from family for most days out of the year, and oftentimes not going home for over a year. And I think what really affected me as a challenge was when you're so focused, especially as a person whose career and debt is in line of whether you pass and get a residency program, you are just so focused in doing well in your medical school curriculums, impressing the right people. and you're putting in extra work, coming in early, leaving late. And it came to the point where I was blindsided because of how much I neglected my relationships. It came to the point where my partner left me and I couldn't afford a place to stay anymore because my med school tuition costs. And it was my last year of medical school where I was actually homeless for a year. So, my last year of
Oh,
medical school, I was living outside of my van, and I think a few times a week there would be like free food or free events, and I would like store that in my car and almost live that life for quite some time. And I traveled the country applying for these internships to try to impress people to get accepted into the residency program, all the while living in my van. And it took a long time for not only the for me to be financially okay with renting again, but also to the point where I felt I was worthy of having a roof over my head because of how um, bad I felt about myself. So that was like one of the biggest challenges in medical school, and I'd like to hope that it got better during residency, but really, it's a hard journey, and I think the burnout rate these days, especially doing residency training during COVID, was not ideal.
yeah. No, so what made you keep going? I mean, I think most people listening to your story would have at some stage in all of that said, this is just too difficult. I'm just going to quit and do something easier. You're clearly an incredibly smart guy. So there's a million different careers you could do. What made you carry on?
I think it was a combination of a few things. I wouldn't say I'm incredibly smart, but I care a lot about things and I don't quit easily. So I may not be the smartest or the sharpest tool, but I keep on going. And I think that most physicians and most people who try to tackle extraordinary things have similar mindsets. But at the end of the day, I didn't want that responsibility, that debt to fall onto my family. It's
Well,
not the same thing as going to med school in the UK or in Australia or even in Canada. You're looking at almost like half a million, $250,000 in debt, and there's not much that you can do outside of medicine
yes.
that could take care of that debt. So I didn't want my mom to suffer that, and she was a single mom providing for us for my whole life, and she was also kind of the only person who supported me going to medical school because of that cost and that risk.
Wow.
So it was something that I had to do, that I
Yes.
wanted to do.
Amazing. Amazing. Fantastic. So tell me, is there a piece of advice that you wish you'd received when you were starting your medical career?
Hmm. I think there's a bunch of things that I learned through the process of going to medical school and through my medical career. I think one of the most important things, and then something that I circle back to all the time, is giving yourself opportunities to remember why you wanted to do it in the first place. You need to have that compass, that northern light, if you will. And for me, it's the feeling of giving that type of service with no expectation for return. And it's
Mhm.
something that gets very muddled in our day-to-day healthcare practice because you're dealing with insurance company changing your notes so that you can get a proper billing code. um, but at the end of the day, I find my greatest joy just volunteering as a doctor, and I think that's the one thing that is helping me focus all my energy and to kind of contextualize all the things that I have to endure right now, because I know in 3 to 4 years, my goal is to practice as a physician on 100% voluntary basis. And I'm
Wow.
working towards that within my business to enable me to do that. So it's always nice to have that end goal of whatever resonates with you, with the spirit of you being a healthcare provider, and also to balance your life. It's seems simple, but in practice, it's very difficult to apply, and it takes a lot of discipline too, because oftentimes, a lot of healthcare providers are the type of people that put others before themselves,
Yes.
and we see that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that putting yourself first has that taken a toll on you personally?
Um, I would say it's been quite some time where I put myself first. But I think now doing it, you set boundaries with yourself, with your partner, with your work, and life seems like you're working towards something and you're not working for a big corporation. Because right now, I would say, especially in emergency medicine, you're working for a corporation who really their main objective is to make as much money as possible.
Yeah.
So that's really doesn't align with why I'm practicing medicine.
Yeah.
And to be told like you need to do this or you need to do that, you need to work more, you need to do all these things, it can be disheartening. So having those boundaries and enforcing those boundaries is something that I think every physician should do for their own health and longevity in the profession.
And tell me how do you keep aligned with your strong sense of purpose that is really coming through when you're talking, that you have, a higher sense of purpose about this work. On the days when it's tough and maybe you're being ground down by the system, how do you keep that sense of purpose kind of top of mind?
Hmm. So I think for me, what brings me back is my patients. There's always one encounter where it's this person who just had, by bad circumstance, something really, really horrible going on with them. And that connection to another human being and to be that support for them, to be that person investigating and to be that person to realign that journey into a journey of possible hope and health is something that reminds me on a day-to-day basis, because we do get drowned by, especially in North America, by the patient who is non-compliant with their medications, who have poor habits and all sorts of things, who are not wanting to change. And I think that above most other things, including the system, is incredibly disheartening. So sometimes it just takes one patient, one good encounter to say,
Yes.
okay, that was worth it. But yeah, it's a game of endurance for sure.
Yes, definitely. So where did your army career fit into the whole picture?
Ah,
Yeah.
yes. Like I said, my mom was kind of a single provider for a long time,
Yeah.
and as I was kind of sharpening up to see what I was going to do in this world, the only reason why I started to do better in my grades is because my cousin Wesley, he went to this like amazing college and he had all this like good swag that he got from the school, and it just looked like an Ivy League type of place to be. And me coming from like D's and E's in like high school, I was like, oh, that'd be pretty cool to be up in a place like that. And he was just so smart, such a cool mentor. He's been teaching me from anything from English to sciences and helping me with my science projects since I was a kid. So I wanted to follow in his footsteps. And I ended up turning things around and getting really good grades and getting into that school. But that was a private school, and my family really couldn't afford it. And I felt bad to ask my mom to say, like, hey, like I got into this place. Um, like, can we scrounge up some money to afford this? Because I knew she was already in a tremendous amount of debt.
Yeah.
So I took it upon myself to join the military at that time for that scholarship and for a salary that really doesn't rival anything else as a 17-year-old.
Mm.
So that's the main reason why I joined the military, and the main reason why I stayed is just you get such good character building there. You get amazing skills, and you get to be a part of a community brotherhood that is like unlike anything that you could get in the civilian world, and that's something that I'm incredibly grateful for.
That's amazing. Yeah. And do you feel that that isn't present in the healthcare system? That
Absolutely not.
camaraderie. Yeah.
Like especially for a lot of ER docs who work similar shifts like I do, it's just one doctor on.
Yeah.
So the only interactions I get from my colleagues are kind of like signing out or signing in, and yeah, their shift coverage, we're collegial, and they're amazing people, but it's not the same as like I would literally take a bullet for you. I
Yes.
would die before I see someone hurt you.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the medical profession could learn a lot from that, and many other professions
And
too.
many other professions, like when
Yeah.
you develop
Yeah.
a culture and a mission where the end goal is to the value of more than your life, like that's hard to do. That's hard to do as like from a systems base. But if it is established, if people are striving towards that end goal, that's just like life changing, world changing.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, how do you currently cope with the stresses and strains of being a doctor and juggling
Mhm.
all of these things you have going on in your life?
Yeah. Again, like for me, I love my hobbies. I love giving value to the community. So what really helps me is that I have things that I do for fun. I'm outdoors. I'm currently doing like a raised garden bed, so I have things that give me peace, that keep my hands and mind busy. And just like how my patients affect me, my students are so incredibly awesome and so curious and so grateful to have me there teaching things that you can't really get right now because a lot of the education that you get in just like wilderness first aid courses and all that, it's the end goal to get you to a hospital, to get you
Yeah.
to a higher level of care. So it's like they're getting access to a doctor level education without needing to pay like $500,000 to get that education, which is, I think, something that should be available to anyone. Because if I could help you identify like a life threatening injury so you go to the ER appropriately, amazing. If I could help you reduce one ER stay, that's going to cost you $1,000+ or hundreds of dollars and at least 6 hours of your own time, amazing. And that's a lot of what our students get to benefit from. And it's just so cool to build a community from the ground up like that. And that definitely gives me some force to withstand the grueling nature of working in the ER.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. So your hobby, and one of your hobbies is this course, which I'm going to ask you about in a second. Your hobbies kind of keep you going. It sounds
Absolutely.
like, yeah, absolutely. I'm also my son has been helping me build a couple of raised beds and planting veggies and things. There's something so satisfying about it, and seeing
Hmm.
plants grow. There's something very kind of mindful and peaceful about it that can be very stress relieving. So that,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
that's wonderful.
And
Yeah,
yeah, you're just growing your own food is something that I think everyone should learn. And it's
yeah,
just it's like you're back into biology class in grade school when you were first learning sciences, and it's just so exciting to see like, okay, I'm going to change my pH of my soil so my blueberries
yeah,
will blossom. I'm going to do this,
yeah.
this, and this so my plants are going to grow together in harmony. And yeah, there's one technique that I'm learning right now to make really weatherproof garden beds. So I'm doing like a Japanese technique of burning and charring and like sealing in the wood. So that's
Ooh.
going to be really fun. Yeah.
Cool. We'll have to talk outside of the podcast about that. My son would love that. He's become very nerdy about gardening, so which is a wonderful thing. So here's a good place to ask you about your course. I know about it. I have been a student in your course, and it's truly remarkable. But tell us a little bit about where the idea came from, and what type of person would take the course, and what
Hmm.
would they learn.
So the course with survival doctors is aimed to get someone from absolutely zero training in both survival and medical skills to the point where you could be like your family's doc or team doc if all systems were completely gone. So if you have zero access to care and you're the last line of defense and protection for your family, that's the type of training that we're going to give you. So it starts in three main milestones for the survival component and three main milestones for the medical component. From the survival standpoint, people will learn how to survive their first 24 hours, then their first 72 hours, then beyond 3 weeks. And why I think that's incredibly important is because the objectives and the resources you need and the training you need in those three big segments are completely um, building up upon the first or the previous, but also very different. We
Mm.
have priorities of signaling, of keeping warm, and then that moves over towards like long-term skills, survival psychology, hunting, fishing, and that type of thing. And it's very similar for medical issues as we look at from acute injuries to long-term living issues. We go from managing medical emergencies. So that's our first module, in addition to things that you might encounter while you're learning these survival skills. So little cuts, bruises, infections, that type of thing, alongside with things that could kill you within minutes. And then as you go on, you are learning things that, okay, you've survived that first 24 hours, you treated all the life threatening things that can kill you. And then afterwards, it's things that are maybe less acute. And then in the last chapter, it's honing in on your diagnostic skills, your management skills, and knowing how to manage things on a chronic basis. So we often get into a lot of things related to your health, your maintenance, your conditioning, and give education where maybe your family doctor's visit, which is 5 minutes, is not covering. So a lot of times people take medications and they don't know what's going on with their body. They stop medications because of side effects that probably would go away if they stayed a bit longer. So getting a good grasp on that is also something that where we end up. So as we're moving towards this course, we are currently in that first 24-hour survival period, and people are learning their basic life support curriculum right now as we speak. And the cool thing is the barrier to entry is nil. As the course goes on, there's going to be more recorded content that people have 30 days access to for free.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm super excited about, because if you can't afford it and you want to learn at least a handful of things that could save your lives and protect your family, you'll learn that for free. And if you can't afford it, pause your subscription. You'll still have access to our community, and you'll still have access to our live Q&A sessions. So you still can get value from that as well.
I love that. And my, I was a physician in the NHS where, healthcare on the large part was free, and it's always been a passion of mine that I really believe that access to basic medical care should be available to everybody. And also, in my work too, I think access to basic medical information about how we can do things to improve our own health. We now know that, and I trained many years before you did, Teimojin. There wasn't much talk about lifestyle medicine, about things that we could do ourselves. It was all about going to the doctor and getting a pill that would, that would make you feel a bit better for a period of time. And thankfully, medicine's moved on a lot now, and the integrative medicine and holistic medicine is coming to the fore. And I think I'd like to think people are starting to take more ownership of their health and realizing there's a huge amount that we can do, and we don't need to be so heavily reliant on doctors. And I don't know if you felt this, but COVID made everybody kind of realize how fragile the system is, and the healthcare system, but like you mentioned earlier, also our access to food and the basics of life. A lot of people for the first time in their lives realized during COVID that actually we need to know more so that we can we can up our game if the need arises, rather than being totally dependent on the system.
Absolutely. And that's the forefront of what our course is aiming to do, self-reliance and resilience, because it's in addition to that, it's not only medical and health issues. Like I'm living in Maine, and we're not a rural area. We're pretty suburban on the border of rural. And when you're out of power for like 4 or 5 days, you have zero heating options. There is no like running water if the pipes freeze up, and you literally cannot go anywhere because of how bad the roads are. Like cars were not able to go out. Like our neighbors were stuck at home, and being able to know how to keep yourself warm, knowing how to prepare for those events. We have countries right now, developed countries. Latvia just got their warning from their government, and they were issued a survival guide from NATO because of the concerns for an impending war. And in that manual, like it's a thick thing. It's over 100 pages. And when they say like, hey, you need to prepare, it's not 72 hours. In the manual, they're saying like you need to be able to prepare for like as long as possible, like indefinitely. So that's pretty scary, because when we think about the Ukrainian war, like people thought it would be over fairly quickly, and look how long it's been. you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely self-reliance is a huge, huge thing that we're trying to promote here.
Yeah, definitely. Such important work. So I would love to ask you, my husband said to me, please don't be a fangirl. But as you know, Teimojin, I found you by
Mhm,
watching the TV show Alone, which is a show that I loved. And you know, you've kind of touched on resilience a couple of times. The reason I love the TV show Alone so much is it shows how capable we human beings are when we have the right training, but also,
mhm,
you know, it shows how resilient and strong the human spirit can be. And you know, seeing people having to be incredibly resourceful and resilient was it's why I love the show so much. And
mhm.
so you were a guest, you were a contestant on series 9, and you lasted an amazing 63 days. My husband and I, when we're watching the show, and we've watched all of the series, we always say, I think we maybe could last about 5 or 6 hours. Like, so, you know, 63 days is just like, it's just an incredible amount of time. Tell me, number one, why did you apply to
Mm,
be on the show, and how was it for you now that a couple of years has passed since you did it?
yeah, I mean, if it still feels like yesterday, which is crazy because
Yeah.
even though there was starvation on that show, and suffering in some senses, it was one of the most peaceful, rewarding experiences that I've had to date. And my
Mm,
happy place is the shelter that I made out there. Like when I go to sleep and I'm having trouble sleeping, I just go back and remember what it felt like to sleep in my shelter, what it looked
wow.
like inside, how it smelled, and yeah, it's a happy place for me. But I think the Alone experience for your viewers who aren't familiar with this show, there's 10 contestants. Most of them are well trained survival experts or outdoors people. And you get to choose 10 items and you just have to survive as long as possible completely alone. So this is self filmed. And I think this type of experience, this type of challenge was everything that encompassed me as a person and everything that I wanted to be and everything that I wanted to pass on to my own kids and to my students. So it was the first time to challenge my military skills, my survival skills, my medical knowledge and skills in a very kind of austere environment where you had like a small first aid kit and that's it. So you
Yeah.
had to be very, very in tuned with the risks out there, in tuned with impending infections, and just very focused on your own health and how to optimize it. So it was just so interesting to prepare for a challenge like that and to go through it. And yeah, that if I could do it again, I would.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, you know, during your time there, what was your biggest challenge? Was it mental? Was it the physical, like you mentioned, the austerity, the kind of harsh circumstances? What was it that really challenged you the most?
Mm. So I think it's always a waxing and waning, a spectrum between kind of the mental, spiritual, and the physicality of it. You know,
Mm,
like at the beginning, like how we break down the course, like the first 24 hours,
yeah.
um, there is a little bit of a drop shock to that. You're in a new environment, you're in a threatening environment. We have big bears there. You're seeing game sign that there's these massive 900-pound bears that could take you in the middle of the night, and you just have like this wimpy like Canadian Tire tarp to protect you at the very beginning. So once you survive those first 24, 72 hours, if you can get over that mind block, then you're cruising for a little bit.
Yeah.
The next thing that gets to towards the physical aspect is like when you start converting from your sugar stores, your glycogen stores to an actual ketosis, and you feel like your body's shutting down, especially if you've never been through ketosis before,
Mm,
and to say like okay, like my body's changing, it's feeling horrible, and you
yeah.
have to really hunt and get food, so food's always on your mind. And one of my biggest challenges was around I think day 12 or 14, where the first few days like I was getting some fish. I got like I think 4 fish that were not huge but like enough to keep me sustained. And after that, like the water's level dropped, it got colder, and I had zero animal protein for like 12 days.
Wow.
And that was incredibly concerning to me because I wanted to do well on the show. I wanted to see the winter. You know, I'm trained in cold weather warfare, and I wanted to see snow.
Yeah.
So I had to hunt for the first time. You know, I've never hunted before that show. That was unlike any
Mm.
other contestant on my season. You know, we had people who were hunting guides who lived off grid for like 20 years. And there I was, just someone who shot recurve bow for fun because
Yeah.
I couldn't afford going to an actual gun range. So I was just shooting recurve for a very long time. But it's different shooting target compared to hunting.
I
And
bet.
that was like my first big challenge because I had to learn how to hunt on the fly.
Amazing, amazing. I can't even I can't even begin to imagine. It was really inspirational watching you, and I love the fact that that you had a medical background as well. You totally inspired me to to go out and be braver as well. I think
Yes.
many of us today are living quite kind of sterile lives, and I love to travel and I love to have a little bit of adventure, but you totally inspired me to push myself a little bit more.
Oh, that means so much to me because
Yeah,
I think a lot of people are in the same boat. You know, people want to go outdoors more. People want to build their resilience. And for me, my biggest kind of point to continue on, because after you've gotten some food, I was successful eventually with the hunting. I
yeah,
had a warm shelter. I was enjoying myself out there, but you come to a point where you kind of ask yourself, like, what is enough? You know, like, are you going to push yourself to a point of debility for a chance of winning $500,000?
yeah,
And I think everyone comes to a point where they ask themselves, when is enough? You
yeah,
know, some people are trying to prove to their families, try to prove to themselves. And it was at that point, I think it was like day 40,
mm,
where I consciously asked myself that question. And it was for my mom. You know, she was in not the
mm,
best health state. And I think my main reason to push harder than I thought I was capable was to hopefully inspire her to kind of see that I cared for her, see that I knew she was capable, because a lot of her resilience was how I got my own resilience. And that was my reason to push. And a lot of people may think like an experience like alone is like a crazy thing that they could never do. But looking back on it, you know, like, you have people like me who've never hunted before. You've
yeah,
had so many encounters, recorded encounters of people surviving beyond what we do on alone, hundreds of days, years in encampments, in war zones,
yeah,
who have zero training. You know, so that's the thing. They had zero training, and they may not have been a spiritual person, but that's something that they consciously evolved into. You know, you have a
yeah,
chance to pass away, to give up, or
yes,
a chance to push through, and you kind of learn how to push through through deciding, making that conscious decision to do one more day, or to do one more step, or to do
yeah,
one hard thing every
mm,
single day. So I think
yeah,
that's the end lesson for a lot of people watching a show like that, is to figure out what that one hard thing is that you have been avoiding like the plague,
yes,
and
yes.
just to make a conscious decision. Tomorrow I'm just going to do that thing no matter what, and then build and build on that to redefine what is hard to you, and to kind of use that as the foundation of your confidence and yeah, your self-efficacy.
I love that. Love that so much. Thank you for sharing all of that. So, based on your career in medicine, and also, I don't know whether I should ask you for six things.
Ooh.
You can give me as many things as you like. What are your top pieces of advice for people on how to stay healthy and live their
Mm,
best lives?
mm. So I think one of the core foundational things for a healthy living situation is, it's a two part. Number one is, if you think that your health might not be optimal, to recognize that, you know, to make that conscious, voluntary evaluation of your life, whether you're a smoker, whether you may be a little overweight, have an addiction, it might be as simple as coffee or cigarettes or something like that, and to ask yourself, is number one, is that an unhealthy thing, and how much value does that provide me? Is it kind of hurting my relationships, my health, or is it not working for me anymore? Like
Mm.
a lot of people who want to quit things that they do on a regular day basis, um, sometimes it's just out of habit. And when they reflect, it's like this thing, even though I need it, it provides zero to no value to me, and almost
Mm.
besides the buzz of it, it's actually hurting my relationships. My son or my daughter hates that I do this, or they're wishing that I would have changed. And once you identify it, um, making that contract with yourself, like saying, okay, like I'm going to change this tomorrow or aspect of it, and to define what that one thing is that you need to do, because a lot of people get kind of distracted or overwhelmed, I think is the better word, with all the things that they have to do with their health.
Yes.
But if you just pick one thing, and it doesn't necessarily need to be the one thing that is the most recommended by your doctor. It can be something that you just find, okay, this is something that's feasible for me to do, that I know I'm
Mm.
going to do, and that I want to do, and that's going to be my first step, and I'm going to commit to it, because that's something that we can build on. If it's something that you feel like I know, like my doctor's been telling me to do this, but I just don't feel like I'm capable at this point, it's hard to make that jump. So really make that first step with something that is valuable to you, something that you think is realistic, something that you are going to do tomorrow, and move from there, and just building on that. I think that that's the cornerstone of everything, because at the basis, like, sure, you can change your diet, you can exercise more, but if you don't start building that mentality and that sense of capability in yourself, it's hard to do
Yeah.
all of that.
I totally agree. Wonderful. Wonderful. Any other tips?
Any other tips? Yes, I think, and I'll speak on behalf of kind of like my family and the generations kind of preceding mine. Is you know I'm not sure how far other people's families go back in their generations in North America or in Europe, or wherever you're coming from. But as someone where their grandparents may have immigrated here, their life and their priorities, and the priorities of their kids, like my parents, were completely different. Like they had to provide for their family. And then I think the generation after that is they had to provide a better life for their kids, and they're just so focused on, I guess, money and stability and finances, that it was very hard for them to truly explore what could make them happy.
Yes.
What kind of purpose did they have besides providing for their family? And I think out of all their hard work, we've come to a point in our generation that, okay, like our families are fairly okay. We're not going to
Mm.
be starving on the streets or anything like that. Um, and I think it's worthwhile to have that conversation with mom, or for your older brother or sister, to really explore that, because you can always make money some way. And there's just so many, like now with the advent of all the tools that we have at our disposal, there's so many ways to make money. So if you are not happy with the work that you do, and you find no purpose in it, like, for your health, for your children's inspiration, find that one thing that just absolutely lights up your world, that gives you joy, not something that you necessarily are passionate about, but like actually gives you joy, that you are excited about, that you obsess about. um, and find a way, if you could change that into your job. I'm not saying quit your job today,
Yes.
but if you can slowly integrate that into
Yeah.
a way to make a living off of it, that just brings a new level of life back into you, and I think
I
that makes every part of your health better.
I totally agree. As somebody who's had, uh, I've had my dream job on 2 occasions and ended up hating it, like really,
Mm.
really resenting it, and my dream job affecting my life. And now, I'm a truly blessed human who has found a job that I truly love, and I wake up in the morning excited to go to work. And it's such a wonderful way to live your life. And you're so right. Our just going back 1 or 2 generations, they didn't have much choice.
Hmm.
Today, there is so much choice, and that is a wonderful thing. It can also be a bit of a curse as well, because it can be a bit
Absolutely.
overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Like
yeah,
direction is such
yeah,
a big concern right now. We have people, and especially when you're growing up right now, it's like you see these people spending six figures or more, especially in the US, on education, and then working at Starbucks immediately afterwards, or working at a job that pays less than six figures. So
Yeah.
there's limited ways that you can pay off that debt realistically, and people are not able to afford homes and all this craziness. And
Yeah.
um, really, like, there's a lot of choice out there, but that could be definitely a burden too. And the education system is, in my opinion, fairly broken in the States. That doesn't give the same value as it used to in the past.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Wonderful. So before we finish, please share, is there anything that you're working on right now that you'd like our audience to know about? And of course, we're going to be sharing, the link to your website, etc., in the show notes. But is there any last thing that you'd like to tell the audience before we finish up today?
Absolutely. So my one parting word is to kind of do hard things. So make that intentional decision for yourself to do what you would define as a hard thing tomorrow. So if you're listening to this, just one thing off the top of your head right now and tomorrow, no matter what, even if you have the sniffles, a cold, or a pulled muscle, do that one hard thing. And then the day after, do the next thing that you define as hard. And you'll find yourself on your way to changing your life. And if you want to learn how to save lives, and if you want to learn how to survive indefinitely, consider learning from our group. And you can find us at www.survivenow.online/lifeline.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. I feel like we could continue this conversation for many hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. So thank you so much, Dr. Teimojin Tan. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you, Leonora.
You're very welcome. So to the audience, thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And I want to wish you all much health, happiness, and abundance, and go out into the world and be extraordinary. Bye for now.